Everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm loving seeing where everyone is calling in from. So keep putting in your info in the chat. My name's Elena Fracchia, and I am calling in from Eugene, Oregon. I'm a former United Way employee. I worked here at the United Way of Lane County for several years. I worked in the financial stability work, and also our community grant making. And I'll talk a little bit about my career path post United Way and what that looks like. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about designing your next chapter and looking at your career and what that looks like, taking a look forward. And so Ivy, why don't I have you, if you can pull up the slides, and we'll just kind of dive right in. My goal is that today is pretty interactive and that you'll have a chance to really use some new tools, to try some new things. So if you don't have something handy to like write with, take 30 seconds to go grab something. I want you to have something that you can write down, something that you can take notes with. Totally fine if it's a Word doc on your computer. But I want you to be able to write some things down from your perspective, not notes on my slides. You'll get those later. But thinking about when we think of legacy, so the title of this presentation is Legacy is a Verb. And when we think about legacy, one of the things that has been coming to me so frequently is we often think about it as something that we leave behind. So legacy is something that happens after we are long gone. We talk about somebody's legacy after they've died, after they've retired and moved on. But I find myself asking this question of, what if we're asking the wrong question? What if legacy is something that we are actively living today? It's not what you leave behind. It's how you show up in life. And so for me, a lot of the work that I do, a lot of what I bring into the coaching work that I do, the consulting work that I do, is really about legacy is a verb. It is an active, iterative, exciting, creative piece of our lives where we are in the driver's seat fully. And so today, this session is really about making that concrete. What is happening today, not someday, not someday in the future, not something that happened in the past, but what are we doing today to show up? Uh, and a little bit about me and my work, so I think you probably saw it either in the bio or the emails or what have you, is I run two different businesses. One of them is called The Good Philanthropist, where I'm a fundraising consultant and I work with organizations, particularly on planned giving, but also just I help corporate organizations figure out their community impact. I help nonprofits work on how do they ask donors for giving. And part of this work has been working with donors and helping donors figure out what is it that they're trying to make happen with their gifts. Through that process, I found coaching. And my coaching work is really based in, and this will be my first sort of mention and drop of this book, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, Designing Your Life. And we will provide resources to all of the books that I mention. But this book really changed my perspective on how are we thinking about and what does it look like for us to be in the driver's seat, to design forward the work that we're doing. And so today, what I'm hoping you will walk away with, and you can tell me if that is true at the end, are a few different lenses. How are we looking at our life? How are we looking at our work? How are we looking at the decisions that we make? And thinking about particularly career change through design, not default. So really rethinking, like I've said, putting ourselves in the driver's seat. I will share a few tools, things that you can implement right now. You can start using right now in your life to start identifying and figuring out where you want to take this information. So I think I saw somebody early in the chat say they just changed locations, they just moved, and they're here to just sort of be thinking about what's next. Amazing. And then my hope is you'll have a takeaway that there's one thing you can do today, one thing you can do tomorrow that you can take back and be able to use for yourself, for a friend, for somebody that you're working with. Um, I think that there is a common sort of theme in the world right now that folks are tired. People are tired. I'm doing a session later this week on burnout. There's so much happening in the world, and so using these tools in our everyday lives starts to help us navigate through change with intentionality. So that's what we're going to look at today. There we go. Sorry, my slide wasn't changing. So a little note on my framework and design thinking in general. One of the things that I notice and I have experienced, I will I will own deeply life or career, and generally just sort of existing in the world by default. By we just landed in the next thing, we got the next promotion, you got another opportunity, your family was here, you were here, your spouse was there. Someone had some expectation of you when you were 13, and now that is still the work that you're doing today. Um, and so design thinking really has us stop for a moment and be intentional about what our actions are and thinking about this as an iterative, playful, creative, expansive, ever-changing process. So, my challenge for you today is to allow yourself some of that creativity, allow yourself to think beyond some of the structures that have existed in your world, and to ask some questions about how you have come to where you are. And maybe if there is more to that sort of existence, and there's more opportunity for you down the line. As we move into this, I'm going to have our first little introduction here. I'm going to give you like a good minute or 2 minutes to think of for you and your personal life. What is your definition of a successful life? And thinking a little bit about where does that definition stem from? So take a couple minutes, 2 minutes maybe, to write down a few thoughts on what does a successful life look like, feel like, and where does your definition stem from? And as we finish up those 2 minutes, I'm going to add another layer. As you look at your reflection and think about your definition of success, what pieces of that definition might you need to give yourself permission to either rethink or reconsider or reframe? All right, I'm looking through pictures. It looks like folks are starting to finish up. Thank you for taking the time. I love seeing people like actually writing. This is part of the process of thinking about and designing a life, designing a career that is meaningful and impactful to you is taking the time to do this work. So I even had a note in my notes here that said, don't rush the 2 minutes. Give people time because this may be the first time you've slowed down today. Um, and so some of this I'm not going to ask you to share out, but if there is something that you noticed that's starting to rise to the surface, if you're willing to share and you want to unmute or you want to pop into the chat, I would love to hear what do you notice about when you actually stop to think about your definition of success? Where does it come from? And while folks, if you're typing, I'll share a little bit about mine. I will share about two versions of mine because I am also in a process of iteration myself. I was laid off from what I thought was a very stable corporate job 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. And during that time, during my entire career leading up to that, one of my definitions of success was job that has health insurance. If you have a job that has health insurance, then that's all you need. And one of the things I find interesting about that is it stems from that was all that was drilled into me around the time I turned 18 and went off to college and started things like getting a job, where my parents always said, that's great, just get a job that has health insurance. Just make sure it has health insurance. That was like the only requirement. So when I got laid off, it was a very interesting experience, right? Because my health insurance ended 2 weeks later, and I had to figure out how to get health insurance. And within a week, I had lined up health insurance without a job. So all of a sudden, one of my core definitions of successful career was being upended simply because I went off and found myself health insurance on my own. Um, and sometimes these things happen by happenstance. Sometimes they happen because we pause and sort of reflect on something and go, well, wait, is that what do I mean when I say that that's what success is? So I think it's an interesting exercise to be checking in as we lean into the work of designing forward. And I want to take a moment. This comes from Bill and Dave's research in thinking about the difference between gravity problems and design problems. And so I wanted to use an example that's pretty familiar, I think, to a lot of folks. I've been in this job, I've been in this line of work, I've been doing this work for 15 years. I can't change roles. And this is where we see folks jump from job to job, company to company in the same line of work without ever changing, even if they're feeling tugged towards something else. That's what we call a gravity problem because it has a fixed component that we are identifying can't be changed, which means we can't design much around it. A design problem would be something that says, I've got 15 years of experience in this work, in this line of work, in this background. How could I bring this into a new space? What could I do with this work in another space? So it's something that is reframable. It's something that we can take action on. We can prototype, we can try out, we can ask people questions about. And it's rethinking this idea that life has to be linear. We have to move up a ladder. We have to continue on a single job path, which is really not true anymore. Historically, that was true. And we were all, you would work towards a really great retirement. And now we're building our own retirement. So what used to be a success is not the same definition anymore. And I want to take a moment and acknowledge because we're all here as United Way people, which means that we are mission driven. I'm going to assume y'all are mission driven, good humans doing the good work in the world, right? That's why we work at United Way. That's why we believe in United Way. And so a lot of times what that also means is it's really hard to separate the cause and the work from the what you need to do yourself to design a life that is meaningful and impactful to you. It feels like betrayal. And I say that full well being somebody that had the hardest time when it was time for me to leave my position at United Way, when it was time for me to move on. The work did not make sense for me anymore. I probably spent another 2 years beyond what I should have because it feels like a betrayal. So I want to acknowledge that because some of this is actually hard when you're in a line of work that is impact work. That's community building. That is impact. And you're deeply invested in the people around you. When I left my job, there was a board member who looked at me and he said, I am so disappointed. I thought that you were going to stay much longer. And obviously, I still have not forgotten that comment. But it's so funny to me because my purpose in life, the work that I did, didn't change by changing jobs, right? But we attach ourselves to work, to a position, to a company, which makes it much more of a gravity problem than the opportunity to design forward. So a couple of things I want to share, and this comes from how I approach work, how I approach coaching when I'm coaching clients, when I'm working with folks to either design their life, so they're wanting to rethink a whole picture, or they're just looking to figure out like what is my next career move, is looking at these three lenses. The first one is purpose. What are you here to do? So not a title, but more of a way of being. What is important to you? What is meaningful to you? What do you want people to feel after they've spent time with you? Curiosity is what pulls us forward. So thinking about what are the things that are worth following? What are the interests that you have that you're curious about? And then the last one is contribution, what you're uniquely positioned to offer. So, what are your specific skills and interests and abilities and all of the things that make you you? Being able to start to identify those things, to verbalize those things, to create some context for the people around you to say, you know what, this is why I show up in the way that I show up and the work that I want to do. Um, and so thinking about that, one of the exercises, maybe I'll give you another minute to think about this because I do want you to actually like take a moment. Um, when have you felt the most yourself in your work? So today we're kind of using this design your career frame. You could substitute work for life if you want, but when have you felt most like yourself in your work? Or you could think about the question, what do you want people to feel after they've spent time with you? So take a minute to think about that because that's part of being able to understand what are we designing toward. Oh, thank you, Ivy, for writing the questions in the chat. I appreciate that. Um, as you think on that, I would love to hear if anybody has an answer. When have you felt the most yourself in your work or life? And what do you want people to feel after they've spent time with you?
I'm happy to answer if nobody else wants to.
Jump in.
Can go. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yesterday, I felt like myself. I was finishing up my workday, and I received a great feedback from um, the director of the school that we are currently serving. And I left home feeling so happy and energized, and having that moment that I am in the right place. I'm doing the right work. I am serving the right people. That's
Mm.
the best season. And I want people to leave my presence the way that I felt. I want them to be happy and energized. And even if they don't do the same thing or they don't work in the same area, I want them to leave with that feeling of contentment. I am doing something that matters, and I am helping people to be healthier, to be happier. I want them to leave my presence feeling that, wow, she's so happy and energized and focused about what she does. I wonder what would happen to me if I had the same attitude.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Anna just helped me think of mine. I've felt the most myself actually doing this work at United Way. When we did United Day of Service with the youth, I just it's not something I have to muster excitement for. It's like I got plenty and then some to share with everyone else around. And so it's just a lot of fun. It doesn't even matter like what challenges I face. It's like that just doesn't weigh up to the excitement that I get and the fulfillment from, doing the work.
Mm.
So just really enjoyed that role.
Thanks for sharing. And thank you to folks that are sharing in the chat too, because these are the things that drive us in the work that we do, the where we want to show up, and starting to notice, and this is where I'm going to go into some of the actual wayfinding tools. Um, and but starting to notice what are those things that make you feel alive and energized and like this is my most aligned self. Now, does every day, all day need to feel that way? No, there's always things we're gonna have to do that we don't love. That's fine. That's part of it. For me, it's marketing. I really don't like doing marketing. It's not my jam. I just want to like do the work. Um, and so, this is one of my favorite quotes, and it has been for years and years and years, and it's probably like the most cliche quote that exists around this line of work, but don't ask the world what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. What you all are talking about, the work that you do, where you walk away and you say, oh, I'm in the right place with the right people doing the right work. Yes, that's what we want. That's what we want to feel like it's you. When we start not feeling that is when we want to start asking some questions. What has changed? Is it the environment? Is it you? Is there something else out there that is intriguing to you? I think all of those things are valid questions to be asking. So a couple of the tools I want to share today, because I want to make sure we get to all of them too, is an energy audit, Odyssey plans, which are some of my favorite, and the contribution anchors. And so some of this comes from this idea that we don't like accidentally find our path in life. You prototype it. You create it, you design it, you go out and talk to somebody about what you're interested in, the intersection of some really strange lines of work, and that being the key place that you need to be. I just started listening to a book where the author was talking about how she was in this like very abstract had this very abstract educational background and was seeing a global company growing into the ranks and could actually see how they were going to be um, uniquely positioned in this global affairs that she had this really clear background in, and the company didn't even know. And so she had gone through this whole process of pitching her idea to the company. Now, I don't think everybody needs to go pitch a new idea to every company. Been there, done that. If you want to do it, I'm happy to talk about that with you. But that's not for everybody. So some of what we need to do is we need to recognize what is in us, what is it that gives us that energy. And so some of what you all have already started is noticing um, what gives you energy, what makes you feel excited. And so using something like an energy audit, using something like I think in the book they call it a good time journal exercise. Um, but where you're writing down what are some of the things you did this week, and then next to them, giving them a rating. So you can use this kind of a rating where you're putting it on a quad where you've got high energy, high meaning. Like, do more of that work. High energy, low meaning. It's fun, but it's not like getting you, it's not getting anything. It can have you drifting off into places that you don't really want to be drifting off. Things that are low energy but have high meaning, we kind of need to do it. But we also need to figure out ways to restore our energy and find ways to restore ourselves in that work, because sometimes that can become draining. And then the low energy and low meaning work, delegate it, get rid of it, deal with it, figure out what needs to happen to make that work happen. If it needs to happen, but also understand that if it is low energy, low meaning, and that is everything that you're doing in your work, it's time for us to rethink, are we in the right line of work? Are we in the right specific position? Are there other opportunities for us? Um, so spending some time thinking about your week. This is what I would actually genuinely encourage you to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks if you have the time. If you're like on a long trajectory of spending some time doing some design work, um, spend a couple weeks and just every time you're out doing something. So Anna, your example, you were at that event, you walked away and you were like, this was perfect. It was just awesome. It gave me all this energy. You would mark that on your list as like, this was high energy. And maybe make a note about what was it about that? Where was I? What gave me the energy? Um, and have a list and start running that list without looking at it. Don't look for themes. I know we all want to look for themes right away, but just run that list and run it for a little while so that then you go back and you can start to see, you know what? When I'm doing this work, when I'm around these people, when I'm in this space, I am energized, motivated, driven, excited to show up and go to those places. When I'm doing this work, when I'm in this space, when I'm doing this thing, I'm less excited about it. And here's one of the key pieces of doing an energy audit. This is not just your day-to-day work tasks. This is also what's happening outside the workplace, what is happening in your life, because life and work are not so separate. How we live our life, the things that engage us, the things that are exciting for us are also brought into the workspace and vice versa. So thinking about where are those energy pieces in your day-to-day life, and this is where I will momentarily share, one of the things that I have as part of my work, my company is called Elena F Studio, my coaching company, and that's partially because it started as a photography business. And my photography work is simply something that drives how I see the world. And it's something that motivates me. Originally, it was something that was just for fun. It was something that I just did. And then I realized there was more to it. There was more to how it connected to the work that I do, how it connected to where I want to be with people, what I want to be helping people with, how I want them to be seen and see themselves. So understanding that, look beyond just your day-to-day work tasks to the things that bring you energy, because there might be more story in there. Then what we're going to do with this is we're going to move into our second tool, which is an Odyssey plan. And this comes directly from that Designing Your Life book. I think they actually mention it in every book that they've ever written. There's a second book on designing your work life. I'm in deep with these two researchers. This tool, I think, is incredibly valuable because it pushes us to think beyond the default. So we started this today talking about a lot of legacy is thinking that we're sort of winding our way through this life by default instead of thinking about ourselves in the driver's seat. And so an Odyssey plan allows you to really start to rethink that. And what you do is you're writing out, 250 to 500 words. You're writing a page on each of these. Life one, it's the thing you're doing right now. So you're going to tell the story. What happens if I continue in this work? I continue on this path. Maybe even if it's like you're moving up through other organizations, but you're continuing on your journey doing this work that you do now, even if it's work that you love, that you're really good at, right? That is life one of your Odyssey plan. The second one is when things start to get interesting. What if that job is not available tomorrow? What if United Way is not here? You can't be a development director. You can't be an executive director. You can't be a youth programs person. What's the alternate? What else would you do? And write that story. What work would you do? The third one, the third life you're going to write out is, what's the one you don't really say out loud or feels a little out of reach? And maybe it's out of reach because time, because money, because somebody would maybe judge you and it feels hard to step into that work. Thinking about what are the things that you're curious about and write out that life. And then what we're going to do is you're going to use those again to look across all three. Is there anything that's drawing you in? Anything you're curious about? Anything you want to ask more questions? This does not mean you immediately go, all right, I'm off to life three. Goodbye, life one. We're done with you. We're moving on. But it might mean you say, gosh, I'm really interested in this idea of running my own X business. What would that look like? Who could I talk to that runs a business that can tell me what that experience is like? Who can I talk to that started a business? Who can I talk to? Fill in the blank. So I'm using the example. If your life three is, I want to go start my own business, go talk to people who have done that. Ask them, what was that like? What was hard? What do you like about it? What gives you energy in that work? Where we start basically doing informational interviews to get more information. And we're just moving one small step forward to learn a little bit more. Again, we're not trying to flip the tables. We're not trying to throw everything out and say goodbye to our lives and just start over. Please don't hear that. That's a lot of work. I've done it. It's a lot of work. But can we inch forward in that? Can we start asking questions? Can we start learning about career paths? Can you find somebody who went from your career path to a totally different one? I have a friend who is an absolute magician at getting some of the most insane jobs without any experience in them. And so when I was job searching 10 before I was at United Way, I called her and I was like, Corey, I need to understand, what are you doing? How are you like what are you doing with your resume? Where are you finding jobs? How are you finding these people to talk to? And how are you getting these jobs? I don't mean to be rude, but like you don't have the experience. How did you do it? And so we had this long conversation about her process. And I thought, okay, there's things in that I can do, and there's things that are not who I am. So I'm taking pieces of the puzzle and taking information forward. Um, yes, there are lots of consultants. You can talk to lots of people who have done this. If that is of interest to you, so many of us would be happy, I'm sure, to talk to you about the process. And then this last one is the contribution anchor. And anchor is probably a little bit dramatic, but what problem are you most uniquely positioned to help solve because of everything you've lived and learned through? What are you, what are your unique life experiences that you bring to the world that you can kind of mesh together in a really interesting way that you can either bring to a company or create in work that is important to you, whether it's a side business, whether it's a passion project, it's a volunteer, all of this designing your life, designing your career can be volunteer work. It can be paid work. It can be with a company. It can be on your own. The reality of it is truly endless. So understanding that you can extend this into all areas of your life, but what are you most uniquely positioned to offer to the world? Um, and stepping into that and saying, you should talk to me about that because I actually know some things. This is a really interesting opportunity and way that you can kind of work in the world, and start to, again, verbalize where are you trying to go? What are you trying to get to? And how can you make that happen? Um, and I will sort of get us close to wrapping here with an example of when I started my business, The Good Philanthropist. I had worked in United Way. I had worked in nonprofit management for 15 years. I had been doing fundraising. I had been working at community level. I had been doing program management. I had done event management. I had done all of this stuff. And then I shifted into work in banking and wealth management. And so I was sitting with people who had money, and I was noticing that professional advisors weren't talking to them about their philanthropic giving. So when I got laid off from that work, it drew me back to the center point to say, wait a minute, there's a gap between these two worlds that I am uniquely positioned to serve. And so my whole starting my business was trying to figure out how can I bring that work to the world in a way that I wasn't seeing it happen. Again, I do not think starting your own business is for everyone. You can find ways to bring that to other companies, as another solution, but thinking about what is your unique place in the world and understanding that any pivot you want to make, any change, any job change, any career move, any move up a ladder, all of those things are going to require both courage and clarity. Being really clear about what you're looking for, what you're working towards, what are the skills you're trying to build, um, and understanding that it's generative. It's something that we are changing all of the time, that we are looking for new ideas, that we're looking for new people to meet with. Um, I encourage all folks to spend some time doing informational interviews with people who you just really think their job sounds cool. Find out what do they really do and learn more about it. So I think that's a really interesting way to also be thinking about how can you be designing with your own integrity? What are you trying to do to make your life a living legacy? The one that you look back on, that you're excited to share about. Um, as we wrap today, I want to leave time for questions. And if we had any questions that came through that I missed, I was like half watching the chat. Um, Curious, what's something that you're taking away or that you want to lean into and be thinking about as you take forward this idea of really designing your career or your life with purpose?
And while you guys are thinking through that question and also thinking about your own questions, I did just want to chime in and mention that if any of you do have to hop off before the top of the hour, feel free to drop in your questions in the chat and we will try to answer them in the recording. And I will make sure to send you guys the replay, the resources that I dropped in the chat, anything that you guys need to get connected to Elena or anything else. And I just wanted to thank our sponsors quickly: Mutual of America, Front Stream, Third Sector Company, Board Build, UPick Solutions, and GivePulse. And then at the end of today's session, there will be, when you leave the Zoom room, like a 3-question survey. If you guys could provide your feedback on the session and anything you guys are looking forward to for next year, please let us know. We are starting the RFP process. It goes out early this week to our consultant collaborative members, and then next week it'll go out to the public. So if you want to be a 2027 speaker or you want to play a part in making suggestions for sessions for next year, please fill out that survey. And then I will just hand it back over to you guys to unmute, ask your questions, share your thoughts, and answer Elena's question, and give it back to you.
Awesome. I see Christy's put in the Odyssey plan. Please do the Odyssey plan. It is so fun. I think I've done an Odyssey plan like every quarter. Just because it's like I get these new ideas and I think, well, what if I did? I mean, obviously, I have 2 businesses. I'm not the example of somebody who knows how to like have an Odyssey plan and not do it. But like, try it on, see what happens, and go talk to people about it. I got into coaching because there was somebody that I met with who was like, "Oh, it's really interesting what you're talking about and what questions you're asking. It almost seems like you would be interested, like you should look into coaching." And I was like, "Coaching? What are you talking about? Like that's an actual career?" And it sent me down a 2-year path of developing and creating and getting trained to be a life design coach, to be able to do this work with people that I'm so passionate about. So I think that's something too, where in those conversations, people may give you ideas that send you on a path of learning, of exploration, and taking one step, seeing if there's a class you can take, if there's a webinar you can sit in on, if there's a session at a conference that's outside your normal work, but you're kind of curious. Those are places that you can go find new information too.
Thank you,
Any other
Elena. We love
resources or
to hear.
tools? Oh, go ahead, Carol.
No, I was just going to say, we'd love to hear from others. And maybe we can take the slides down if that's okay, just so we can get to see each
Yeah.
other. Thanks, Ivy.
Oh, look, people love it.
Yes, and somebody was talking, so I'm sorry I cut whoever off. And maybe not. Okay. Well, I'm going to say this out loud just to get this out there. Thank you, Elena. This was really refreshing. It's always, I've talked to so many people, some of you on the screen, about your journeys, right? Where you were, where you are today, and what's your next kind of thinking. And that doesn't mean this is about leaving United Way. This is about finding your path forward and the roles that you can play today, but the roles you can play tomorrow. So I loved seeing some of the chats, commentary from some of you that I know and know kind of where your heart is. So it's just great to have you here. And yeah, so Matt put in the comment, Odyssey plan, what an incredible, I don't know that I know that
Like
word.
zeitgeist.
Yes,
Yeah.
great.
I mean, truly. The other thing, if folks are, maybe you joined this session because you're like happy with your job, but you're also just sort of curious. You're career curious. I love that. Um, Another great resource, because I'm never short of a book recommendation, is a book called Do Over by John Acuff. If you don't know this book, whether you are starting a new career, thinking about a new career, or like super stable in your current job and like you're never going to leave that job, you should read that book. And here's why. It is a roadmap for how to utilize your current work, your current network, and develop it so deeply that should there ever be a time where Odyssey plan number one became true, your job is no longer in existence. That is literally what happened to me. Working towards my job, and then they're like, you know what? We're actually not going to have that entire position at the bank anymore. Thank you for your time. Your job ends tomorrow. Uh, so like my Odyssey plan, that was literally what happened. But I had done the work to build the network, to clarify my skills, to be able to communicate them. And that book gives you a lot of good exercises on how to do that. So highly recommend that one. We did a lot of book clubs with people who were laid off in the banking industry at that time with that book in particular. And I recommend it whether you are job searching or not.
Elena,
Yeah,
oh, I'm just thinking, oh, by the way, thank you. You've just done an excellent job with this programs. Really
thanks.
good. I was thinking about the path that I try to follow and how every day it seems like there are dozens of things that are trying to pull me off that path. And I remember something that I learned back when United Way of America had a training academy. It was run by a fellow named Don Plambeck, and his favorite expression seems to fit very well here. And it was, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so true how easily we can fall into literally just what's right in front of us instead of what we're trying to work towards. So this is where taking the time to set aside and say, is this asking the question, is my definition of success still my definition of success? Is the work that I'm doing still work that is energizing? So doing the energy audit and saying, am I still energized by this? And if it's changed, one, give yourself a little bit of grace to say, wow, I'm really glad I took the time to recognize that. And then two, one next step. What's the next thing you want to do? Is it read a book? Is it do a webinar like this? Is it try something new? Is it do a little bit of journaling and say, gosh, I need to spend some time with that. I wasn't expecting that to come up. Um, because we can get in this world where so many things are vying for our attention, it's so easy to get distracted and just continue on the path that you have been on without ever asking a question, without ever asking a question about it. And I tell people this all the time. I can, with 90%, probably 95% assurance, tell you that had I not been laid off, I probably would not have started a business. It would not have been my first choice. So I needed some big upheaval in order to push me to do that. But would I have found a path that made sense, that worked in my favor? Absolutely. And the truth of this is that our lives can take lots of different paths, and none of them are wrong. They're just the next path, the next step forward. So finding your path, finding your way through is what is most important, and aligning what feels right, what feels good, what feels aligned. That's what becomes really powerful in that process.
I love that. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other final thoughts, takeaways, things you're excited to go forward and dive in?
I,
Yeah, Stacy.
I'm usually not this quiet. You can ask Carol. I'm usually in the chat or talking. It just gave me a lot to think about. Coincidentally, in our staff meeting today, we did a very introspective exercise as well. So it's
Mm,
been a full day of like, wow, deep thinking, which is good. But I have sort of a similar situation. 10 years ago, I was in a car accident that changed my life. And I had been in healthcare for 25 years plus. before that. And a lot of things changed. I had to have surgery. I lost my job. I lost my car, just really had a moment where someone pointed out to me a year later, were you doing because I was very depressed about it all. Were you doing what you wanted to do in the first place? And it stung. It hit me.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I really wasn't. It was what I fell into and what I
Mm.
just continued to do to make a living and raise my family and do all the things. And it was that moment that changed everything and how I ended up at United Way, actually, because I went back to school and it changed my degree, went back for nonprofit management and started
Mm.
on that path. But I tell myself continuously, don't wait for the next car accident to
Mhm.
think about the rest of your life because of
Yep.
that. So thank you for
Yep.
today. I appreciate it.
You bet. Yes, I feel the same. I I I fell into it because I got laid off. I do not believe you have to be laid off, quit, or have the rug pulled out from under you in order to make big life decisions. And so I'm now on a mission to help people do that in the comfort of like having a stable job or having some stability in your life while you're making those decisions and setting that path. There's lots of great opportunities for that.
Elena, as we're wrapping up, I just want to give a shout out to this group. Make sure you know we have mentors available that do career coaching. It's not, again, thinking about what's next and like necessarily leaving the role you're in, but it's really thinking about your current role. This is, how you're feeling about it, doing the energy audit and all the things. So if you do have an interest, some of you are already working with mentors, and I know that. So I just wanted to give a mention of that. We also have a huge consultant collaborative group, which Elena is a part of. When she was talking about if you're thinking of starting your own businesses or you're thinking to venture out and do something, maybe a side hustle, those are all entrepreneurs that have figured out a way to start their own business, leveraging their experience through their United Way journey and all the things that got them to where they are today. So it's an excellent talent pool, not only to tap into as a resource for yourself and your community, your United Way, your nonprofit, no matter where you're serving, but just also with one of the exercises that was mentioned early at the beginning. And then lastly, I'll just say, we are so grateful, Elena, for your time and the energy you poured into the session. It's evident by just the responses by everyone. And then to each and every one of you for showing up today. A lot of times these sessions are a smaller group and it seems a little more intimate when there's not more than 20 people. So it worked out really well today. But there are people that will be listening to this afterwards. So we want to encourage them as well. If you found some information while listening to this afterwards and you have questions, feel free to reach out to us at unitedwaynext.org. Check out the website, look at the things that we offer, and by all means, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Ivy as part of this follow-up. You'll have all of our contact information. So with that said, Ivy, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap it up, and then we can give Elena the last minute?
The only thing that I was going to mention is I believe this is our last personal transformation session of the year. So we will have all of them included in a playlist on YouTube, and you can also find them in the member hub if you are a United Way Next member. Plus, we have last year's personal discovery playlist, which I also highly recommend. There's talk of like uh strength finders and all of those things, the disc assessment, anything that you might find beneficial. And we do have an exclusive consultant collaborative panel on the 11th. We have a fostering inclusive leadership event on the 19th, and then we do have on the 25th a event about losing board members and kind of turning that into a positive, and then a ton of other events for this quarter and next year. And again, if you want to be a speaker or you have ideas for 2027 events, please let us know.
And Elena, do you have any last words you want to share?
I just want to say thanks all for showing up, for being here, and go enjoy and live the lives that you are meant to be living. And I just, I would love if 2, 3 years down the line, one of y'all reached out to me out of the blue and said, I attended that session. Here's where I am now. Please, always, always tell me that. So, like, go be awesome, do really amazing work, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Elena. Thanks everybody for being here today. It was great to see everyone.